This is the Cromarty Firth in the north of Scotland, long known to be one of the finest natural deep-water anchorages in Europe, and therefore an ideal area for the servicing and building of the rigs and platforms of today's oil industry. During the last two world wars, the people of the little town of Cromarty grew used to seeing the grey ships of the British Home Fleet sheltering in the waters of the Firth. But further back through the centuries, the town thrived and prospered from a busy sea trade. And the evidence can still be seen in the buildings. The old 18th century rope works, now converted into living accommodation. The brewery, now a residential study centre for Robert Gordon University, Aberdeen. The handsome Georgian houses of the merchants, traders and sea captains, and the smaller but substantial cottages of those associated with the once thriving fishing industry. Today, the whole of the old borough of Cromarty is a conservation area, and many of its residents are craftspeople and artists. And it serves as a dormitory town for those who choose to live away from the hassle of their working lives in busier parts of the area. So, this is the place where for over 300 years, since 1358, the chiefs of the Clan Urquhart held the barony of Cromarty as their principal seat. But the origin of the clan goes back much further into history than this. Indeed, as today's chief explains, this bay, Urquhart Bay, and this castle, Urquhart Castle, on that most famous of lochs, Loch Ness, surely shows an older connection with the clan bearing the same name.
Although Sir Thomas Urquhart traces the family back to Adam and Eve, the fact of the matter is that the best that we can learn historically is still rather old. It goes back to Glen Urquhart and to St. Columba, who visited the glen during the 6th century. And they converted a saintly old man, and the people of Clan Urquhart. That was over 1400 years ago, and we're very proud that Christianity was introduced into the clan at that time. There really is no history between then and the beginning of the 1300s. However, legend tells us, and there's no reason not to believe it, that a great hunter in Glen Urquhart by the name of Conica Moore slew a ferocious boar, and that has contributed to the heraldry of the clan, as you will see, in the various coats of arms of the different families associated with Clan Urquhart.
But it was to another seat of Clan Urquhart, in Banffshire, that members of the clan got together in May 1994 for the first day of the first gathering of the Clan Association. This is Craigston Castle, 8 miles inland from the county town of Banff on the northeast coast of Scotland, a few hours sailing across the Moray Firth from Cromarty. The sun shone on the 500-year-old castle and on the Urquharts, who'd travelled from various parts of the UK and from overseas, including 26th Clan Chief Kenneth Trist Urquhart of Urquhart, the Urquhart, along with his wife and son Wilkins. The gathering was organised by Commissioner and Treasurer Adam Urquhart, whose father, the distinguished military hero of World War II, Major General Roy Urquhart of Arnhem, founded the association in 1980 along with the present owners of the castle, Bruce and Bobs Urquhart. For Adam, this was a rather special day.
Well, it's the fruition of an ambition to see you all here today. I must say it's our first gathering in modern times. Now that I see you all here, I can see it's been worth all the effort. Thank you all very much for coming here. We're a small clan, which makes us, I think, all the more exclusive. Makes it easier to trace our ancestors and identify with our roots. Clan, of course, is the Scottish word for family, and I think we are a family. We have over 60 paying families as members of the Clan Urquhart Association, which is good and a nucleus for a thriving clan association. But I think with the number of Urquharts there are in the world, we ought to have more members. And that is my job. A lot of you have got grown-up children and relatives, and very few of them are actually members in their own right. They see the newsletter because you guessed the newsletter. If each of you could get 1 or 2 children or relatives as members, we could double or treble our membership. So I encourage you to take some application forms which are in the hall home with you and ask them to fill them in. Again, on behalf of the clan, I'd like to thank Bobs and Bruce for letting us use their castle. We, the Clan Association, are committed to the preservation of the castle, and in our own small way, we've contributed over £1,000 to its maintenance. Other clans have established museums, and we are fortunate to have Craigston for all the reasons that you will find out today.
Fortunate indeed, for earlier on this century, Craigston almost succumbed to a fire which broke out in the Queen's Room, as it's called, where Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was once given hospitality. Gone might have been the portraits of Urquhart ancestors. Not this one, though. Eleanor, the eldest daughter of William Urquhart of Meldrum, was so renowned for her beauty she was painted by Sir Henry Raeburn in 1794. But the portrait was sold in 1937 to the Washington Museum in the United States to cover death duties. And gone might have been the library with its unique collection of old and cherished books, especially those of interest to Urquharts, as this one by the already mentioned 17th century royalist Sir Thomas Urquhart of Cromarty, who incidentally is reputed to have died of laughter on hearing that Charles II had been restored to the throne. And gone too might have been the remarkable set of carved panels in the drawing room and ante-room in what was once the great hall on the first floor. No one knows the true origin of these, but they could possibly have been brought from the older castle of Cromarty when it was pulled down in 1772. Of that castle, built in the 1500s, only this artist or architect's drawing remains to show us what it looked like. But these ancestral lands in the county of Ross and Cromarty were lost to the Urquharts in the mid-17th century, due in no small way perhaps to financial losses by the chiefs over the years in supporting the royal house of Stuart. The 15th chief, Colonel James Urquhart of Cromarty, took a prominent part in the Jacobite rising of 1715 and served as an agent for the exiled King James, father of Prince Charles Edward, Bonnie Prince Charlie. When Colonel James died in 1741, the chiefship of the clan passed to his cousin William Urquhart of Meldrum in Aberdeenshire, near Craigston, and from then until 1898 this was the seat of the chief. The last chief of this line was Major Beauchamp Urquhart, an officer in the regiment, the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders. But before we leave Craigston, Alexander, son of Bruce Urquhart, highlights some of the points of the architecture and one or two of the characters associated with the castle.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and give you a kind of brief version of family history and castle architecture. I know that family histories can be at best confusing and at worst boring. So I'm going to try and keep it brief and make it simple. if we believe the information on the shield, which you've probably all seen on the right-hand side of the front door, Craigston was built during the 3 years between 1604 and 1607. It was built by John Urquhart, who was known as the tutor of Cromarty, on account of his deep reach of natural wit and great dexterity in acquiring many lands. That description was written by Sir Thomas, his great-great-nephew, and the translator of Rabelais. When you go to the top of the house later on, you'll see a series of landscape paintings that show Craigston in about 1730. It looks exactly the same as it does today. The building does, not the landscape, which is rather barer. But originally there were no wings on the castle. These were added shortly before those paintings were painted. It's also possible that there were once turrets on the ledges that you've no doubt noticed on the corners of the castle. They were certainly seem to have been constructed for turrets, but there's no evidence that they ever existed. But Craigston's main outside feature is the sculpture at the top of the arch, which is unique in Scottish architecture. It's not that easy to see from the ground, but it depicts a strange gathering of grotesque knights, along with a piper and David and Goliath. The outside of Craigston has changed very little since the mid-18th century, but the inside has been remodeled twice. The first changes were financed by Captain John, whose portrait is the one on the left of the fireplace. And he bought Craigston back from the Duffs, who'd owned it for the previous 80 years. Cromarty, built by the main line of the family, and Craigston by Cadet branch, were lost at the end of the 17th century, but both were bought back in 1741 by William Urquhart of Meldrum on behalf of his cousin, Captain John Urquhart. This was a legal fiction. Captain John was a Roman Catholic, and under the penal laws of the day, could not hold land. Captain John was a privateer and worked for the Spanish crown. A perfectly respectable occupation, and not a pirate. Married to William of Meldrum's daughter, Captain John united both family lines and brought both castles together under the same ownership for the first time in their history.
And sated with Scottish hospitality and Urquhart history, the clan members and friends assembled for one very special photograph for the family album.
Okay, if everyone could look this way.
Which way? Our way. If I looked like you, I'd be rich.
Next day, they moved on to Cromarty. The important ceremony of the day was to take place at Cromarty House, built on the site of the old castle above the town, approached on this occasion by what was once the servants' and tradesmen's entrance, and now used only occasionally as a shortcut for those on foot. Cromarty House was built by the Rosses in the 18th century, and probably with a lot of stone from the old Urquhart Castle. When the last Ross Laird died in 1960, it was taken over by Michael Nightingale, who bid a warm welcome to his guests on this unique occasion.
Chiefs who are with us today, ladies and gentlemen, members of the Clan Association, it's a very great honour and privilege that you should all be here today, and I extend to you all a very hearty welcome. I'm particularly honoured that the Lord Lieutenant, Captain Roderick Stirling and Mrs. Stirling should be with us as the Queen's representative, because this castle of course doesn't belong to me, it belongs to the Queen, and I'm simply the constable for the time being. So it's very appropriate that Her Majesty's representative should be with us today. It's a great joy to have the clan chief with us, Kenneth Urquhart of Urquhart, and Mrs. Urquhart, and I think their son is with us too? Yes, and they've crossed the Atlantic. It's easier, I suppose, to do today than it would have been when their forebears went out, perhaps in a terrible rough sea in a boat, but it's nevertheless great that they should be here, and it's good that we have with us the representatives of two clans, John Shaw here, head of the Tordaric clan, right? Clan Shaw, and Hector Munro, who's representing his father, head of the Munros. So it's a very great day. Now I thought it'd be nice, since this is the first clan gathering of your association, if in fact you could repossess the castle at least for one day. And so I can't hand over, as constable of the castle, I can't hand over the keys because the locks all seem to have disappeared, so the keys wouldn't be any use to you if I had them. But I can hand over the flagpole, and I'm going to ask Alan to lower my flag and to raise your chief's flag as a symbol of your repossessing the castle for today. While Alan's doing this, so as not to embarrass him or anything, I will go on with a few remarks that I had to make. The castle, in fact, stood somewhere here where we are, and the only visible remains of it, in fact, is the well, which, when we finish the ceremony, you can have a look at it. I put the plough there so that you shouldn't fall in. I'm told, has extremely good water, or it did have in it, in that my predecessor's father, General Sir Walter Ross, would never start the day. A lad used to have to come out here every morning and fetch a bucket of water from that well, although he had the system that we've got now in taps and things, but he insisted on having a glass of the water from the castle well, and that is in a sense the only visible sign of the castle.
I would certainly like to express my deep appreciation to Michael Nightingale, present Constable of Cromarty Castle, for making possible this very historic occasion. In fact, it was his idea, and this indicates how much he is into the spirit of medieval things, to realize that this would really be not only a symbol, but a thing of very great importance to a clan. It is, of course, impossible for me to express the historic significance of this. You are standing on absolutely sacred ground as far as Clan Urquhart is concerned. And I can hear and see generations of chiefs and clansmen here from 1358, and actually before that, but officially from 1358 until their unfortunate departure in 1685. As Michael noted, there are no memorial stones to the chief in St. Regulus churchyard. The chapel is gone. The beauty of being a chief, however, of a clan is that you need no memorial stones. The simple reason being that you are the memorial to those chiefs. They are your ancestors, your predecessors. The clan is their living memorial. We are certainly very grateful to Michael Nightingale and his wife for having us to lunch here. We are especially honored to have our fellow chief, John Shaw of Tadarick, and his charming lady with us. This is especially significant to me because his father and mother were dear friends of mine, and also because I was introduced to Highland life by Ian Shaw of Tadarick, and I can assure you nobody could have given me a more proper introduction to the Highlands than the late chief of the Shaws. We're certainly honored to have the heir and successor to the chief of Clan Monroe and the Lord Lieutenant, Captain Sterling, to be here with us also. And we're especially delighted and charmed that so many Urquharts have come out again to uphold the name. So let us depart and enjoy ourselves today. Thank you.
And one more guest had arrived, a little late, due to parliamentary duties. Member of Parliament for Ross and Cromarty, Charles Kennedy.
Hello, Kenneth Urquhart.
Very nice to meet you, sir. Very nice to meet you indeed. That's all? Hello.
Thank you on the phone.
Yes.
Very little remains here nowadays to remind us of the Urquharts of old. Other houses in Ross-shire, which were once Urquhart homes, have passed out of Urquhart hands. Like New Hall, now owned by John Shaw of Toddarroch, chief of Clan Shaw, and warmly regarded friend of the Urquharts. And only a mile or so away, Bray Langwell, once home to several notable members of the clan. But the house and lands were lost sometime in the 1820s when the extravagant lifestyle of the then laird Charles Gordon Urquhart, an officer in the Scots Greys, obliged him to sell his estate. And when he died in 1828, this ancient little church and burial ground of Kirk Michael on the shores of the Cromarty Firth was all that was left to his younger brother, David. He was an outstanding character of his day, a scholar, diplomat, world traveller and writer. He spent many years in the military and diplomatic services and was Member of Parliament for Stafford in England, but ironically is best remembered nowadays for having introduced the Turkish baths to Britain. His son Francis Fortescue Urquhart, the 24th chief, was Dean of Balliol College, Oxford, where he was affectionately known as Sligger. He remained there for 36 years, during which time he introduced students to informal holiday study at his own chalet home in Switzerland, and this practice was continued after his death in 1934. But to more recent times. Today we have Sir Brian Urquhart, who was the United Nations top diplomatic troubleshooter, and from the time he began work at the Preparatory Commission for the UN at the end of the Second World War until he retired in 1985, he was responsible for achieving several lasting peace settlements, for which he earned the nickname Mr. Peacekeeper. Sir Brian was the young intelligence officer portrayed in the film A Bridge Too Far, but the main character, played by Sean Connery, was Major General Roy Urquhart, a man whose bravery as commander of the 1st Airborne Division at Arnhem has gone down in history. He died in 1988, having founded the Clan Association with Bruce and Bobs Urquhart of Craigston. But there are two solid and substantial reminders which have stood the test of time. From the early Urquhart Castle of Cromarty, one very fine piece of carving known as the Kinbehy stone, which rests today in the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh. And the other, less intricately worked but carefully preserved, has been incorporated into a fireplace at Cromarty House. Both are full of Urquhart emblems and date back more than 3 centuries. On a visit to Cromarty Courthouse earlier in the day, the Clan Association members certainly caught an impression at least of one of these interesting Urquharts they'd been hearing about. This award-winning restoration is now a museum and visitor centre, interpreting the history of Cromarty and of the ancient sheriffdom of the Urquharts. Here you can meet Sir Thomas Urquhart, translator of Rabelais and who claimed to trace his ancestry right back to Adam and Eve, and who created a universal language.
My universal language is a most exquisite jewel, more precious than diamonds. It has 11 genders, 10 tenses besides the present, 7 moods in its conjugable words, 4 voices and 12 parts of speech, and is so compact of style that a single syllable will express the year, month, day, hour, and partition of the hour.
And how many Urquhart ancestors would have known this courthouse building in its former role, or assembled round the old Urquhart cross, or attended at this place of worship, a fine example of a Presbyterian church of the 18th century. This was certainly an occasion which meant a great deal to Kenneth Urquhart, whose own line stems from Bray Langwell, just a few miles along the Cromarty Firth. And during a brief spell of relaxation over that weekend, he took time to tell me a little about his own family background in the clan.
We descend from a younger line. When Meldrum died out in 1898, since we've always followed in the Urquhart family the descent through the males, they then looked for the next male heir. It took a while to find him, and we can fill in who were chiefs in between looking back, but nothing much happened. So often you find references in the Taunton books and what have you to the chiefship being dormant after 1898 when Major Beecham Urquhart of the Cameron Highlanders was killed at Atbarra. And it wasn't until my father came along, and in the course of establishing his identity as Urquhart of Bray Langwell, that it became evident that there was indeed an important male heir, and the Lord line ultimately recognized him as chief. Now, how do they descend? Well, They descend from our friend Thomas, who built the castle in 1506. Thomas is as well known for having fathered 36 children by one wife who performed magnificently in this respect.
Indeed.
25 sons, 7 of them killed at the Battle of Pinkie. But in addition to the eldest line, which continued on at Cromarty, a younger line was established through a man known as Thomas Urquhart of Davenston, who held an estate very close to Cromarty and held it of the chief at Cromarty, and descended from Thomas Urquhart of Davenston are the Urquharts of Newhall and the Urquharts of Brelangwell, Brelangwell being a younger line of the Newhall line, and I'm descended through that line.
But how did they end up in the States, though?
Well, a younger son, cousin, so to speak, but of a younger line of Brelangwell, who lived over in Aberdeenshire near the Fergusons of Kinmondy, Old Deal, that area, decided that fortune lay in the New World, not in the Old. So he decided after Britain acquired British West Florida to go there to make his fortune, and that's my ancestor, George Urquhart, who immigrated from Scotland, Aberdeenshire, to British West Florida, the capital at Pensacola, in 1766, and ultimately ended up on the Mississippi River in 1772. And then his widow, after he died in 1779, moved to New Orleans, which was then Spanish, and we have been in that city ever since.
Do you wear the tartan when you're out in the States? That very nice bit of tartan on your lap there.
Well, I wear it proudly, and as proudly as I do in Scotland. What I wouldn't normally wear it in Scotland, except on state occasions and festive occasions. The same thing applies to the States. We have Highland games, and you do wear it there. I'm asked in my capacity as chief to be the guest of honor here, there, and the next place, and I certainly wear it there. But it's always been worn for weddings and things of that nature, and all of the members of the family have killed tartan and that kind of thing.
I noticed, Chief, that you've got your bonnet there with that rather special badge in it, and I've always wondered why this bare-breasted lady on the Urquhart badge.
Well, I don't think that requires too much explanation. The Urquharts always have had an eye for the ladies, but they're very particular. They really like attractive ladies, and I am delighted that we have an attractive lady on as cap badge. My sole objection to ladies in the cap badge is that somehow the manufacturers of cap badges do not understand what good-looking ladies look like, and they've produced something that looks closer to a gorilla, which is an insult to us and also to womanhood. But apparently the Urquharts, well, look at the portraits of the ladies they married, and I'll cite my own mother and grandmother and so on back. There's a certain type they like, and I don't know if that has anything to do with bare breasts or not, but this is on the Kinbakey stone, which Sir Thomas Urquhart had carved in 1651, and it is the official crest for the chief.
And here's someone else who's particularly proud to display the clan crest and motto and tartan. I asked Pipe Major Duncan Urquhart to explain this.
This is a very special sash. I think it could be the only one.
It is the only one in the world. The silver pipes at the top denote, obviously, being Pipe Major. And this is our clan crest, which is mean, speak and do well. And at the bottom, we have the Thistle of Scotland. So I do wear this sash on very special occasions when I turn out with the pipe band or as a solo piper. But today, of course, is our very special occasion when, of course, it's a must.
Now, of course, being an Urquhart, you're wearing Urquhart tartan, but I've been told that you actually have a whole pipe band dressed in Urquhart tartan somewhere in the north of England. How did that come about?
That is correct. Well, after leaving the forces many years ago, I kept the piping going since I've was so much interest in it. And, of course, local friends of mine who were also in the forces and came to settle in the northwest of England, I decided to to get together, and we would have some piping entertainment for ourselves, and then we thought that we'd like to get the pipe band together. So it was really spring last year when we started, and we have 8 pipers now, and the drum section's coming along quite well. So total, we're 10 to 12 altogether.
All in Urquhart,
yes,
tartan?
They are indeed. They're all carrying the Urquhart plaids, the Urquhart badges, and they're all in number 1 dress, which is the military number 1 dress.
And no guessing who was the only one wearing Urquhart tartan here. Duncan, playing along with the local pipe band from Strathpeffer. And there was yet more to see over the weekend for the clan members. More churches, burial places, castles, and further afield to Loch Ness and Glen Urquhart, which is where Kenneth and family were heading after our conversation. What are your feelings about what I call clanship today? How important is it, to be a member of a clan, do you think?
I think it's extremely important. The business of genealogy and what have you is interesting, and I do not consider that very important. At least I do a lot of this and I enjoy it. That's sort of antiquarian thing. But to have a close-knit family, though you may be dealing with 7th, 10th, 12th cousins as far as generations, people who really have an identity and understand the character of this family, what it stands for and so forth, and use that to apply to their lives right now and to the future. That's really important. And if you look back in history, you'll find that that was done. This is not something we've created recently. And that tradition, most assuredly, should be continued, because it's this type of thing, not simply with clans, but with any number of institutions, which equals the continuation of Western civilization. Unfortunately, there are too many things tampering with that now, but at least the clan system is one way to help preserve, in my estimation, in a modest way, one aspect of Western civilization and many things associated with it.
And what about yourself? What do you feel about your role as being clan chief, about being the father of the clan, the family?
Well, it falls to me to be the representative, the embodiment, as it were, of Connacht-Moor, of William of the Motehill, of Adam, the first sheriff of Cromarty, of Thomas with the 36 children, though I haven't tried to imitate him in that regard, I only had 5, of Sir Thomas, and so many others. They lived through me, and I am, as it were, like the monarch in the nation, the focal point for Clan Urquhart. It's a patriarchal society. Now, what is my role there? Within my own limitations, I am supposed to lead and inspire. In an older day, we would be out, in battle and all that wonderful business, but I'm not given an opportunity like that. So the only thing to do is to try to lead them in the battle of the good against the bad, as far as choices they will make in a civilized society, i.e. to help them to be more civilized. They're pretty civilized as it is, but we have to keep them on the track, right?
Now, although this heralded the end of the first Clan Urquhart Gathering in 1994, More Urquharts got together once again at Cromarty, Craigston and Meldrum in 1999. So we thought we'd add on a few glimpses of this second gathering of the Clan Urquhart Association, which had some added attractions. This time they were delighted to have an invitation to Bray Langwell, where the new owners, Ronnie and Laurie Strange, welcomed them with wine and canopies and allowed them the freedom of this beautiful old house, now open to the public as a private hotel. But this visit came at the end of a long day which had taken them from Inverness to Glen Urquhart and to Cromarty. So it was off into the evening rain and onto the hotel for dinner and a talk on Urquhart history. It was this much older Urquhart edifice which was supposed to be the site for viewing next morning, but I'm afraid that heavy rain totally prevented me from filming, and only a few hardy souls braved the tramp through the dripping fields to get to Castle Craig. Built by Urquharts in the 16th and 17th centuries, like so many other castles, it eventually passed out of their hands. It was, of course, much larger than what we see today. All that remains is the central keep, with its gun loops and shot holes, evidence of the turbulent times of that earlier period. However, it has ended up back in Urquhart hands, for in 1959 it was gifted to Clan Urquhart by the father of John Shaw of Tordarroch, and plans are now underway to secure its stable future. And the Clan Association itself, young as it is now safely established with this second very happy get-together. At the end of this second day of various events round and about in the Black Isle in Ross-shire, the association members arrived at the recently restored and converted Cromarty House stables, where the hosts for the pre-dinner reception were Mr. and Mrs. Alwyn Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds' wife, Helena, is an Urquhart and locally born, so they've retired here on home ground. Kenneth took this opportunity for something a little special.
In 1994 we had the first worldwide gathering of Clan Urquhart, the first gathering convoked by the chief in modern times. Adam was largely responsible for initiating this, and with the help of his lovely wife Liz carrying it off, and it was a splendid success. I was invited along with Mary Virginia to attend, and it was touch and go as to whether we would be able to come for a long time because of my mother's ill health. However, we were able to get away. By that time it was too late to do something which I had wanted to do and which I consider very appropriate to set a tradition for the future. But this time we had preparation, and we also had some wonderful friends to help us bring this undertaking to fruition. So what I have been able to do is to create a very exceptional award which will be presented by the chief on rare occasions. And I think we have an excellent opportunity here to make the award to somebody who richly deserves it. So the first award of the chief I'm going to present shortly. But before I do that, I would like to thank two people who were unable to be present here, Jennifer and Michael Fraughton of Murray, Utah, who were instrumental in helping me bring this project to this point, and also Glenn Cook, who is with us and helped with it. And through them, I was able to find a medieval silversmith, that is, of course, a living silversmith who works in the medieval style. And he was able to produce an appropriate award, which indeed looks old and ancient in sterling silver. And I would like to present that award at the Cayley tonight to Adam. And it reads, Clan Urquhart, the Chief to Adam Urquhart, for outstanding loyalty and service. Cromarty, May the 28th, 1999, the first to be presented, Adam.
That's fantastic. What can I say, really? Bowled over, that's a wonderful thing. Great. Well, thank you very much, Kenneth. I don't know if I deserve that, but anyway. It'll be 5 years till the next one, I can tell you that much. So, that's good. Right, we're going to dance, I think. That's the best thing to do.
Dance of the evening. We leave this year's gathering in my home area of the Highlands. The clan members will move on to the other homelands in East Scotland. And as Adam said, one thing for sure, it's 5 years till the next one. In 2004, the Clan Association held their third gathering, this time larger and longer, and with an even more varied programme, and based mostly at 2 hotels in Inverness as a good central starting off point for the tours which had been organised. At the Beaufort Hotel on Tuesday, 27th of July, Kenneth welcomed the first arrivals and explained one of this year's innovations.
We have decided for this gathering that we would introduce something new, which I think will be regarded rather favorably and will be a valuable addition to gatherings and carry on into the future. We decided to create a logo especially for this gathering and a participation certificate for everybody who's here, which also carries the logo. We've had lapel pins made, which we're going to present to each one here, or those who are not here will receive them mainly on Thursday. I'm going to introduce and present the first certificate and the first 2004 Clan Urquhart Gathering pin to somebody who has been a faithful attendant to all 3 gatherings, 1994, 1999, and now 2004, one of our greatest supporters. She doesn't have the last name of Urquhart, but she certainly should have. And her name is Allison Wilkie, so she'll have to put that camera down and come
I can't get out of here. I held myself in. That's lovely.
Don't want to move that. So,
that's very nice. Thank you very much.
And this is...
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. For those of you who don't know...
So, although perhaps a little immodest of me to show that clip, I hope it explains how the windshield of my new camera got dislodged, and although I didn't see it in the viewfinder, we can all see it now and in the ensuing shots, such as the dance practice which followed that first meeting. After summer coaching by Kenneth's daughter Christina, Mary Virginia, I can vouch that these beginners did very well indeed. Next morning started with a trip to Culloden battlefield, just 5 miles east of Inverness, a poignant place to visit at any time, the scene of the last battle to be fought on British soil. In the 19th century, a cairn was erected to commemorate that date, and stones placed to mark the massed graves where some of the Highland clans were thought to have fallen. Although fewer in number by comparison with MacDonalds, Macleans, Munros, etc., there were Urquharts who fought on the Jacobite side, and today, due to recent negotiations with the National Trust for Scotland, the Clan Association have erected a seat to those who fell on that April day in 1746. One clan member came with an extra special purpose and a rather unusual idea. Jennifer, what are you doing?
I do a little blacksmithing as a hobby, and I have some beliefs about steel and the memories that go with it. This battlefield has seen a lot of blood spilt on it, and yet a lot of life still comes out of it. So by placing the blade back in, it's sort of recognizing and remembering those who died, and also the fact that despite their death, there's still green things growing here and that life goes on, and the best way we can remember them is by living honorably. And now this blade has been in this earth and in this cycle of life and death, and now I'll be able to remember it specially that way.
Now, may I ask, are you an Urquhart by descent or by marriage or what?
No, actually my family has a very long history with the Urquharts, back all the way to the 1700s, and all of the Kirks that are Le Mercier Duquesnay Kirk from my father down are Urquharts now.
So this is very special to you?
Yes, this is.
And you're not going to leave the knife there, obviously?
No, it's going to come with me.
Right, thank you very much, and let you join the others. But time only for an hour's visit on this occasion, for a civic reception awaited at the town hall in Inverness. They arrived exactly on time at 11 o'clock to be welcomed by the provost of the city and some of the members of council.
We have this wee logo mentor we get.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you very much.
At this time of day, before noon, the sustenance offered could only be tea, coffee and cakes, but taken in a very prestigious setting indeed, for Inverness Town Hall has a unique place in British history. But before we hear that story, Provost William Smith did hand over something a little stronger.
14 miles south of Inverness we have Tomatin Distillery, and Tomatin Distillery produce a really quite an exceptional new brew. And for you and your clansmen, perhaps I can present you with 4 bottles of 12-year-old. We give it to your clansmen at an appropriate time. It's a great pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to see you here. I really do hope that you enjoy your trip to Inverness and the Highlands, and I hope that perhaps you'll be able to come back and see us in the year of culture, 2007. Thank you very much.
In September 1921, during the parliamentary summer recess, a certain matter relating to the Irish situation had to be urgently discussed. And as the Prime Minister, Lloyd George, was holidaying at Gairloch, about 60 miles to the northwest, his deputy at Beaufort and the King at Moy, both just 10 or 12 miles away, and many other ministers also in the Highlands, it was decided quicker and simpler to hold the meeting in Inverness. A quick-thinking town officer passed round a sheet of paper for their signatures, for this was the only time Parliament ever convened outside London. Winston Churchill was at that time Colonial Secretary. Inverness Town Hall was built in 1882, but this edifice goes back much further and is all that remains of the much larger 13th century Fortrose Cathedral on the Black Isle. Derelict at the time of Oliver Cromwell, it's he who's supposed to have had much of the fine stone ferried across the water to Inverness to build a fort. While one group visited the cathedral, the other members were learning of even earlier days in history, the age of the Picts at Groam Museum in the neighbouring village of Rosemarkie. Groam Museum is an important Pictish centre today, for the Black Isle and Easter Ross is rich in Pictish sites, and in particular some of the largest and most beautiful carved stones in Scotland. Another day the itinerary took them to far, far earlier years still, for inland from Loch Ness up Clan Urquhart the visit was to the Corrimony Chambered Cairns, a fine example of 5,000-year-old burial chambers. Great fun for the youngsters, but even they had to watch their heads.
And the other ones are passage graves.
On the way back through the glen, there was a brief stop at St Ninian's Scottish Episcopal Church, which, if Kenneth won't mind me mentioning, is just a stone's throw from where he owns just a wee bit of Scotland, Urquhart home ground. And then it was on the road again to a fairly important part of the gathering tour, to the castle which bears the name Castle Urquhart, one of historic Scotland's most visited sites on the shores of Loch Ness. From the car park above the well-hidden visitor centre, it's easy to see why this castle, on its strategic site, was attacked and changed hands again and again over the years after it was built in the 12th century. And thankfully it was a good sunny day on that particular visit, for on the other evening trip down the loch by boat, the weather wasn't quite so kind. In fact, just being on this world-famous bit of inland water is pretty special in itself. And a castle with your name on it is also pretty special, so I kept behind those who were keen to get a good close-up as we rounded the headland of Urquhart Bay.
There's been a Urquhart Castle for almost 1,500 years. The castle you're seeing today is medieval, it's 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th century. In its day, it was the third most important castle in Scotland, and militarily or strategically speaking, whoever controlled the castle controlled the loch or the lake. There was Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle, and then Urquhart. Robert the Bruce is also there. After that, the castle became a Scottish King's Castle, a royal castle, and its possession was fought over between the Scottish Kings and the Highland chiefs, mainly the MacDonalds, who were known as the Lords of the Isles. This fighting between the Scottish Kings and the Highland chiefs went on for hundreds and hundreds of years. The castle had a long, bloody and brutal history, but eventually, in 1698, the castle was destroyed on the orders of London to stop it falling into Highland or Jacobite hands.
This has given you only a glimpse of some of the venues and visits during the 2004 gathering, and the Urquharts went on to Aberdeen, Meldrum, Stirling and Bannockburn, but we leave them here on their last day in the Highlands at the ball at Bray Lang.